I will be surviving 100 days on a deserted planet. With nothing around me but sand, getting resources is going to be extremely difficult. We'll have to find creative ways to get resources and generate power. I've got 3 goals for this video. Goal 1 is to explore the deserted planet, finding an ancient civilization. Goal 2 will be to get into extreme crafting. And for my last goal, I want to automate every resource in the game. Yes, this is an outrageously impossible task, but nonetheless, while playing this, I felt like a pioneer taking on a decade-old pack. So sit back, relax, and enjoy watching me survive on a deserted planet for 100 days. I needed to find my bearings. Opening my quest log, my first task was getting emergency supplies. These were stashed safely in the back of my ship, and it included some water, bone meal, and a sapling. The perfect starter kit to survive the barren land around me. I claimed my first quest, which played an explosion sound, and I thought I was already cooked. After that little spook, it was time to spring into action. I planted my first tree and got wood. An axe was essential to speed up my progress as well as a new tool, which is called a crook. Breaking leaves with this new tool gives a higher chance of saplings as well as silkworms. These silkworms will need for strength. Now I just had to repeat this tree chopping process a couple of times. I then infested one tree with some silkworms, transforming the leaves into string leaves. Once the leaves had fully turned white, I could then use the crook to harvest the string. Back inside of my ship, I made a crafting station, after which it was time to make my first set of tinker tool stations. Now we had the issue that we had no access to any metals or dust of any kind. But that's where the sieve comes in. With some wood and a string mesh, we can make a sieve in which we can turn sand and dust into materials. Now we had enough sand and dust around us to last a lifetime, so that was already great. Adding some storage and a barrel to the setup kicked us into the production phase. We can compost saplings back into dirt using these barrels. One use for dirt is to make dirty water. We can then further filter this with a charcoal filter to get clean drinking water. After making a normal sieve and advancing my quests, I also got a new heart. This was awesome. The second use for the dirt right now was to sieve it in order to obtain pebbles, which turned into cobblestone. All we had to do now was go back and forth, chopping trees, composting, and sieving. Before I could get that, I needed weapons. Since husks don't burn during the day, we needed to do some monster hunting. With the pebbles I got from sieving dirt, I firstly made a furnace that could be used for charcoal, and in turn for torches. The faster I had a safe area around my base, the more work I would be able to get done. I did have to pop a heat resist potion since the desert planet was really hot. Another big advancement was making our first wooden crucible. This could turn saplings and leaves into water. And water is the source of all life, and in our case, the source to skyrocket our progression. Putting dust in a water-filled wooden crucible makes clay, and clay combined with bone meal makes porcelain clay. In order to get the dust, we need to hammer down gravel into sand and sand into dust. Luckily for us, we don't have a shortage of sand around us. With enough porcelain clay, I made an unfired bucket, which needed some heating in the furnace. With access to portable water, I could now make a very simple farm. It wasn't much, but it was honest work. Rice and potatoes were also all I had for now. Finally, it was time to do some more sieving. I compressed my dust into 7 compressed blocks, which I can sieve in the heavy sieve to speed up progress. And just like that, we now had metal ore pieces flooding the base. 4 ore pieces combined into 1 ore. Goodbye to the Stone Age and welcome to the Iron Age. I made shears with my first set of iron ingots. I needed to shear the infested leaf blocks for a quest, and apparently you can sieve these infested blocks with ice cubes and slime balls. The drop rates were atrocious, however. RNGesus really did not want me to have access to the gel slime armor because I'd be too powerful. Against all odds, I sieved away like a madman. I got completely sidetracked as well by the cooling coils. My biggest enemy right now was temperature control, and this machine looked absolutely juicy. I hung up some slime balls to dry, which apparently turn into edible food as well that way. And I worked on the farm and sieved for some more resources. I sheared trees like there was no tomorrow, and used the leaf blocks to compost in order to get more dirt. I expanded my barrel emporium, almost making me feel like my house was a wine distillery. I then looked into something called an auto tree chopper. I thought this was my ticket to infinite logs, charcoal, infinite fuel, and power. However, when I went to place it down, it didn't seem to do a whole lot, not gonna lie. My second disappointment that day was seeing that I needed to find an igloo to get the frost rods for the cooling coil. Instead of going out and finding an igloo on this planet, I worked on daily tasks, making a hammer that I could use on cobblestone to get gravel. I made a shovel and an axe stencil. This could be turned into flint tool heads, which knocked out another quest off the list. Combining both the tool heads made a mattock, a very convenient tool that is a shovel and an axe combined, as well as a hoe. A little zombie cleansing later, I still had no idea why this tree chopper was not working. Later that day, I found this, an automatic sieve, and I knew this was my entry ticket for automation. Also, eating the dried out slime balls apparently gives you speed, so I guess eating an unknown substance can be good sometimes. While struggling with the heat, I looked at my quests and it was clear that I had to do some heavy resource grinding. The nighttime was perfect for this. I just had to be wary of baddies outside. The general workflow is to compress the dust, then sieve it, after which we can melt everything down, and I felt I was running out of space. So I made a plan to hollow out everything underneath my crashed ship. Come morning time, I started to realize that this tree chopper sucks fuel like a bitch. Back to basement renovations it was. With the current housing market, I was better off building it from scratch anyway. After all this digging and sieving, I was finally ready to do some automation. I made the auto sieve. I gave it a string mesh, and it did a whole lot of nothing. This thing needed power, which honestly makes sense, but I got my hopes up way too fast. Good thing for me, we had access to solar panels after completing a quest for gathering metal ingots. Oh, also, you will crash when you take heat stroke damage and use a heat resist potion. So keep that in mind. While it was cooling down, I also realized there's the second recipe for the cooling coil, which is made with diamond shards. This was massive news. The last of my metals for the quests were melting, and I was taking care of daily tasks, and finally we'd have access to power. With 2 solar panels in my position, I placed the auto sieve and a panel on top of it. But it was nighttime, of course, so we didn't have any power generation. But during the day, we now had infinite power. A small note though, I didn't realize this at the time, but this thing only generates 10 RF per tick. I did not realize this. So during the day when I was looking at the auto sieve, it was going very, very slowly. Now, putting that problem to the side, I wanted to make some transfer pipes and some transfer nodes. This needed vile dust, which was obtained in a couple of different ways. You could get sand into a barrel of witch water, which I did not know how to make. You could get a void resource miner or an atomic reconstructor. Yes, an atomic reconstructor. Absolutely overwhelmed by just the name of these machines, I made some baking wares instead so I could start eating good. I also learned that if I wanted diamonds, I would have to sieve gravel. Now, I also wanted a tinker smeltery, but there didn't seem to be any recipes for it in JEI, which meant we had to find it somewhere. While working on the basement, the undead got a bit restless. You know, it's just so peaceful with all the undead moaning in my ears. I continued my culinary expertise and received an epic bacon in return. After some more sieving, I finished my gelled slime pants and figured out I could double my dirt for my farm with this new type of soil. Now, the problem was that Pam's harvest craft crops didn't work on this though. Also, a baked potato glows for some reason. Wait, this baked potato glows? This baked potato glows, man. That's kind of funny. I then started to research power generation. It seemed like the first types of generators would all require some type of fuel to be burned. Now, I did realize something really interesting. We could make lava with the crucible, and if we add a torch underneath it, grab some cobble, it will melt it into lava. I already got a couple of bright ideas for mass lava production and lava power. During the day, I added some dirt and grass seeds outside to make a grass patch because I wanted some passive animals to spawn, hopefully. In order to make the witch water, we'd need to do some sieving, because apparently ancient spores have a really low drop rate, but they can make mycelium, which turns water into witch water. Before doing that, my ADHD got the better of me and I noticed a quest for exploration. Safe to say, I set out immediately for this ruined city, and it was surprisingly close to my crash line. I found some spawners, bookcases, and a chest with some Tinker's Construct materials inside. And later I've also found a building full of forge blocks. Now, sadly, my flimsy wooden pickaxe was not up for this task, as I got bombarded by mobs that were guarding this place. I made a run for it back to the base, placed down whatever blocks I scavenged, made an iron greatsword and an iron pickaxe, and I went straight back for more. However, this time, it was a little bit more dangerous, since my exploration was at night. I came across a desert pyramid, which had some loot I had never seen before. Machine upgrades, bee drones, all very confusing to be honest. The dead really did not want me to gather up the forge, but that did not discourage me. After taking care of business, I started mining straight away. I wanted as much seared bricks as possible to make an enormous forge. While I was here, I completed the quest for discovering this abandoned villa. I needed a couple more tinker blocks to complete the quest, however. Now, I did find a building full of forge blocks, which was crazy. I killed off the remaining undead and ran back home with my bags full of great loot. I started building my forge and completed the previously mentioned quest. With this forge, we'd be able to quadruple our output. Yes, 1 ore will turn into 4 ingots. This would skyrocket our material production and we'll be able to move onto some insane machinery very soon. I made the forge as big as possible, so we'd be able to melt half a stack of ores at the same time. I also made some new stencils for some epic tools that we now had access to since we made the forge. My wood problems were fixed, as I found a jungle sapling, and 4 of these will create a tree with more wood than I'll ever be able to store away. I upgraded my tool station into a tool forge, which I'll need to make the cool next level tools. With gold in the forge and stone tool parts in my hand, we can make casts that can be used to pour metal into that will make the epic tools. I set my sights on bronze as a main ingot. The bronze I poured into the plate, lumber axe, excavator, and tough tool rod molds. This all combined creates a lumber axe, which chops a whole tree, and an excavator that digs in a 3x3. These tools were next level upgrades. The lumber axe saves an incredible amount of time and is incredibly satisfying to use as well. The next quest on the list was getting 30 rice and 40 rice seeds. I'd been kinda slacking on farming, so this quest absolutely sucked. Instead, I installed a glass roof over my basement. I did kinda mess up and the undead started pouring into my base, but using my block advantage, I took care of my own mess. I spent the rest of the day hollowing out the base and making a little storage area. After numerous Google search and asking around in the Forever Stranded Discord, I finally realized how to use mycelium. You needed to place a bucket filled with water on top of a mycelium block, and that will slowly turn your water into witch water. Finally, we'd be able to get the vile dust I so badly needed. And I got a new friend in the base. My first vile dust was ready melting, and I made my first set of transfer pipes. To make the transfer nodes, however, I would need some redstone, and I didn't have any right now, which was yikes. So back to sieving for redstone it was. After getting 2 redstone, I made the nodes and tried putting them on my cobbled gen. However, I realized I needed something called a world interaction upgrade, which was not in this mod pack, and I was dumbfounded. Instead, I used the nodes on my furnace setup to make this semi-automatic. The kill quest ended up catching my attention. Enough kills and we'd be swimming in loot. A pro tip is to use compressed crooks. This will insta-break leaf blocks. The same goes for the hammer, although a compressed hammer does not insta-break compressed blocks. Now, I still had to do some manual sieving, but honestly, seeing all the drops on the floor looked really juicy. I also wanted to create this survival generator. I just needed a little bit more cobble and I'd be able to start producing RF. I went to collect my auto sieve and the place was swarmed with undead. One cleansing later, it was time to test out the survival generator, which worked with apparently any kind of fuel. The bad part being that this only generated 10 RF per tick, and the auto sieve consumes 40 per tick. Back to the drawing board it was. And there was a plethora of generators available. While researching, I found this cobblestone generator, which really piqued my interest. The recipe was surprisingly easy, and when I placed it down, it did exactly as advertised. I put a chest on top, and we've now got infinite cobble. I quickly got an iron chest upgrade followed by a gold chest upgrade, and we're swimming in cobblestone. My next task was to light up the grass patch and start building a great wall around the base. The less mobs would be able to come in, the better for production and safety. I made the wall right on the edge of the light of my torches. During the night, I worked on expanding my base so we'd have more working space and added a chest with a transfer node to my autosieve. Naturally, I ran out of resources, so back to digging sand, breaking compressed cobblestone, and sieving compressed sand it was. After some more research, I found this gem, a coal generator. Now don't let the name fool you, this puppy can also take lava. With an engineer's hammer, I made some tin plates which resulted in a battery. This combined with a furnace gave us a coal generator. I also made a fluid tank from Ender.io, which has a built-in hopper system for fluids, and I grabbed the nearest crucible. It was time for my master plan. I ended up hooking a cobblestone generator up to the crucible for infinite lava, then added the fluid tank and made it pull in fluids from the bottom. With the coal generator on top of that, we now had infinite power at 40 RF per tick, just enough for the auto sieve to run. Now, as long as we give it buckets, this system should be up and running. I proceeded to make a capacitor as well. This can store up to 1 million RF. As a sorta makeshift power bank, you could call it. All I had to do now was hook up the autosieve to the capacitor and add a feed for items so it can run 24/7. With that, our first production line had been set up. I wanted to learn more about actually add-ons, starting with the Atomic Reconstructor, but once I opened the guidebook, I was bombarded with knowledge. With this newfound knowledge, I made a biogas engine that was totally not from that mod, and it turned lava into power. But this thing would apparently need constant maintaining, and I wasn't all about that. While doing some base work, a blood moon rose, which was bad news. I still hadn't finished my wall, so I grabbed all the cobble I had and set out to fix this problem. That being said, I got quickly overrun by mobs while trying to fix all the little gaps and holes. Luckily for me, my base was still a safe space. When I returned to my autosieve, we had sieved our very first diamond. This was big news. I then started my next project, which would be an automatic water collection system. Magical Witch also fell out of the world at the same time, which was rather interesting, and I needed some more resources for this. So while burning up, I had to dig myself into a hole with water and break the compressed sand that way. A little primitive, I must admit, but it worked for now. Before I continued work on my water system, it was finally time. I added redstone to a barrel of lava to get netherrack, which would then be melted down into nether bricks. This makes the yaw hammer, a much needed tool to make the shard die mold. This could then be used to make diamond shards. And you already know what these diamond shards do. Oh yeah, they are used to make the cooling coil. We had acquired temperature control finally. Using this coil while sitting in water drops your temperature like crazy. This meant we could work day in and out and not have to burn to death. Back to Project Water Plant it was. I made an iron drum with a cauldron, iron plates, and a couple of ingots. I placed this on top of the fluid tank, which was pulling in from all sides. This drum could hold 256 buckets of fluid, which was plenty for now. Adding a chest on top of the barrel with a transfer node and some pipes made this a semi-automatic water plant. I also upgraded the auto choppers to tier 2, although my hopes weren't very high for these. Having found the iron drum, however, I added a second infinite lava generator in the base and upgraded the torch underneath to a crucible with netherrack. If you light a fire underneath the crucible with the netherrack, this would quadruple the speed at which the cobble melted. With another drum on top, the system could run for quite a while before running out of space. I also did a bit of tinkering with a furnace and transfer nodes to set up a system for these tree choppers to perpetually fuel themselves with charcoal. Now this looked very advanced, but I was still skeptical. Another upgrade we had to get into in the future was gravel production. For now, I still had to break compressed cobble with compressed hammers to keep my sieve going, which is absolutely not what we want. Walking outside of my base and looking at this wasteland, I realized just how badly I wanted to automate everything and farm every single resource. The automatic tree choppers seem to be working fine for now, but only time will tell if these can keep up. While looking through the various recipes, I found this quantum storage unit. Oh my god, quantum storage unit. Oh, is this for one item? Oh, interesting. Switching gears from quantum storage, I wanted to work more on my offense though. And as such, I made a cleaver blade out of obsidian. I also poured a pickaxe head and a shovel head, since one of the quests required these for some reason. And when I finally put two and two together, I saw that this thing had 139 durability. What is this flimsy tool? I thought obsidian would make it unbreakable. What black magic is this? Now, you might ask, why a cleaver? This is why I want a cleaver. I'll be chopping off heads of every living and undead creature in my vicinity. That's a big sword, man. Oh my god. Look at this. Oh my god, we're an absolute unit. We are an absolute unit in slime armor and obsidian weaponry. I love it. With that quest out of the way, I had access to a soul-forged steel chestplate, effectively doubling my chestplate defense. The next quest required pig iron, which requires iron, blood, and molten emeralds. We were not ready for this. I didn't notice a new questline that opened up as well. Creating life. Whoa, 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 whoa. This is some next level stuff. This is some next level stuff. You may have noticed the complete lack of native life on this planet, outside of the hostile monsters. Luckily, I have a solution. If provided the correct ingredients, I can create the animal you want. These quests are repeatable. Oh my goodness. Every animal required a different set of items to be able to be summoned. With that in mind, I cooked up a diabolical plan to, instead of create life, use it as sacrifices in my forge or molten blood. With that in mind, I spent the rest of the day working on the base and starting a new farm. We're gonna need to build up our food supplies in order to last a long time with sufficient nutrition. With my first crops planted on the new farm, I read up on how leather was created. Apparently, cooked meat hung up on a drying rack would eventually turn it into leather. A little unconventional, but hey, who am I to judge? After my leather discovery, I made a big upgrade. I went from an iron stiffened mesh to a diamond stiffened mesh, further increasing my chances of getting diamond, lapis, coal, and most importantly, unlocking emeralds. While taking a good look at my autosieve, I realized I could double down on this system to automatically hammer cobble into gravel and pump that into the sieve. To that end, I thought raiding a battle tower would be an easy way to get some additional resources without manually sieving. Because to be honest guys, I am so sick of manually sieving. Unfortunately, however, I immediately got humbled upon entering the tower. The spiders absolutely cooked me. I left the tower in search of endermen, because I was fairly sure that at some point we were going to need ender pearls. And this was the perfect time for my ender slayer sword that I found in the desert pyramid. This seemed to work wonderfully. The rest of the night was spent hunting endermen. The next day I wanted another weapon. I wanted something fast. Cue the rapier, the undisputed champion of attack speed. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh my god! It didn't hit! Where's the water? I'm about to die. I'm dead. No, I'm not dead. We live. We live. Half a heart. We live. After my little test, the rapier wasn't all that, to be honest, so I reverted back to the trusty greatsword, and onto the battle tower I went once more. I was gonna say a lot of leeway, where these guys don't really spawn as much, but they still do. Especially the skeletons. They did spawn quite a bit. Okay, coal redstone string. Huge. Filtered water canteen already has to be drunk. Gives me a lot more thirst as well. Oh, these guys can give me spider eyes. That's right. I can make stock with that. The spider eye stock. That's huge. Glass and great bread is good. I guess since we don't have a door here, it's not really cooling us off. Okay, now it is. You just add water and you're good. Oh, that's a lot of zombies. Oh, that's a skeleton right there. And that's a poisonous spider, and we gotta get out of here. Ooh, ooh, ooh. They might actually end up killing me. Poison, the arrows flying everywhere. Oh god. I'm at half a heart right now. That is not great. I have toast. With the toast, I'm good. A lot of regen. Still got some saturation left. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Oh my god, what in the world? Compressed zombie. Really? So that summons 9 regular zombies. Yo. That's a little bit crazy, don't you think? I think that's a little bit crazy. Boom. What's inside of here? Mushrooms. They can grow on mycelium, though. That's extra. It's an extra type of food. I do quite like that. The night was still young, and I was hungry for Tinker's Construct faucets. It was just gonna be a quick mine and dash operation. And quick I had to be, because these mobs had hands, man, let me tell you. Back at the base, I installed the faucets, and we could now extract blocks of molten metal to turn it into ingots. After sorting the forge out, I checked on the sieve system that had generated some emeralds, and most importantly, some more diamonds. These I then crafted into a diamond hammer, combined with some iron components would turn it into an auto hammer. I hooked the bad boy up next to the capacitator, giving it direct access to power, and the auto hammer was now making cobble into gravel, and the system was running. Hooking up some transfer pipes made it automatically transport the gravel to the auto sieve, but the problem was that I now had a whole setup that consumed 80 RF per tick, and I only generated 40. So I gathered materials and started expanding the system. 2 more fluid tanks were added, with another coal generator on top, and that should solve my power production. I did, however, quickly have to install another crucible to fix the lava generation issue I would otherwise have. But with that, we now had a fully automatic hammer and sieve system running. I also made a regular sword out of bronze and slapped lapis onto it, giving a looting 1. And after that, I added diamonds to most of my tools for a flat 500 durability increase. During the night, I made another auto hammer and hooked that up to the infinite lava machine I made before, so I could make a second production line. I expanded that line with an auto sieve to make my second fully automatic sieve that I just had to supply with sand, and redstone would be a problem of the past. Later that day, I finally made a backpack, an essential upgrade in every run, to be honest. And after a little clay making, it was also time to finish off that second production line. With additional crucibles, I could then light these underneath the fluid tanks to get that power going. The second production line was up and running, and by pure luck, I accidentally discovered that using food on one of the sieves will give it a speed boost. While cleaning up the outside of the base from the aftermath of a sandstorm, I realized I needed to find a way to automate dirt production. Now, the first thing that I could think of was having a wall of barrels hooked up to a couple of chests where I could then dump anything into that would compost automatically. Just like that, we had a semi-automatic dirt production unit. Next on the list was ground traps. These are blocks in which we can use bait to lure passive animals and farm their drops that way. All we needed for this was some potatoes as bait, which we can then combine with string, and that actually makes the bait. I then grabbed the dirt from my production unit to start filling in my passive mob farm. Yeah, this was that grass patch that I sorta abandoned. We surround these ground traps with dirt that will eventually become grass, and voila, we got some passive mob drops incoming. During the night, I worked on digging some more space so I could expand the base, filled in the roof with glass for that cool sci-fi effect, and after removing the sand that was inside of the base, we had a lot more working area for extra machines or production lines. The whole day on day 39, I spent on working on my farm and acquiring more dirt for the grass patch. After checking on my sieve, we had some more lapis to be spent on the sword, inching us ever closer to looting 3. While staring at my witch water barrels, I realized I could actually automate soul sand production. I just needed to hook up some transfer nodes to extract the soul sand, transfer nodes to pipe in regular sand, and an extra set of transfer pipes to pipe in water. Then using a fluid transfer node, I could extract the water from my water plant and pump it across my ceiling into those barrels. I felt like a pioneer discovering something without any Googling or wiki usage, which was honestly a really cool feeling. My water usage would skyrocket and possibly deplete my whole water drum. Now for this, I had a solution: another farm. Before doing any of that, I did make a lunchbox. Yes, it took me 39 days to realize that this lunchbox was in this pack. For those who don't know, this lunchbox will cycle through different foods for optimal nutritional value. Very handy, honestly. To put my plan into action, I first had to make an atomic reconstructor, which was surprisingly easy to make. I also made some leadstone flux ducts to transport RF and hooked up both solar panels to the reconstructor. Then we just needed to throw some coal in front of it to make void crystals, and we'd be all set for my master plan. With these void crystals, ender pearls, and a couple of other items, I could make ranged hopper, a scarily powerful version of a hopper as the name suggests. Now for this farm to work, we needed snad, which was 2 sand combined that makes crops on it grow faster. Next up was a bunch of cactus, and you probably already know where this is going. I traced out a 9x9 area above the base, which I hollowed out and connected to the base. I filled in the floor with some snad and made a checker pattern using cactus. Then I just needed to add some trapdoors on top of the empty spaces between the cactus, and boom, you've got an infinite cactus farm. Hook up the ranged hopper on top of that and connect transfer nodes with pipes that pipe the cactus directly into the chest on top of my water plant, and we now had a fully automatic infinite water generator. This was awesome. Now this farm was working so well that you already know I just had to go and double it and make an additional one above it. I hooked up the second farm's ranged hopper with some transfer nodes and pipes, and everything was flowing nicely. I did have to quickly confirm if the system was transporting the cactus correctly, but after waiting for a little while, it did indeed appear so. Now, to work on my weaponry, I remember from the old days that there was consecrated soil in Tinker's Construct, a way to give your weapons smite, but in an extremely strong version. Adding 3 consecrated soil to my sword didn't seem to do a whole lot, but just wait until we get this level 1 smite maxed out. After all that hard work, it was time to sit back and make sacrifices to the forge gods. Since we needed blood in the forge and I had spawn eggs, this was like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Or better said, killing a pig and a chicken with a forge. Same thing, right? After melting down some emeralds in the forge, I could then confirm this was indeed making pig iron. Later that night, I added my last remaining lapis onto the sword to give it looting 3. After which in the morning, I was able to fully max out Smite 1 on the sword. And let me tell you, this Smite 1 adds 7 extra damage to undead, which is wild. One extra use in a water drum is that it's already purified, so drinking water was completely sorted now. During the night, I would spend some time advancing the kill quest, and once the sun started to rise, I spotted a weird structure on the horizon, and upon entering said mystery structure, I got some major flashbacks to Warcraft, since this was one of those roguelike dungeons. The undead inside of here were absolutely restless. Before I was gonna get cooked, I made sure to get out of there as fast as possible. Arriving back at the base, I noticed that my crops had died. My best guess was that there was some kind of mechanic with sunlight, water, and seasons, but honestly, I'm just grasping at straws here. Inside the base, I made some drying racks and filled these up with rotten flesh before replacing my crops, and weirdly enough, these also immediately died on me. Maybe this was just a sign that farming was not for me. When I finally got to making another void crystal, something wild happened. The atomic reconstructor transformed the sand around the crystal into soul sand, which was actually a major discovery, because this was the easiest way to get a lot of soul sand in a short amount of time. I tried it again with some sand dropped on the ground, and surely enough, it did it again. In order to advance our way well into the machine age, we'd need redstone, and a lot of it. The best way was to use a diamond stiffened mesh on dust. I quickly made one and gave it to my second production line, and after that, I extended the leadstone pipe system next to the reconstructor, added generators from actually add-ons, and gave these some fuel. And these things were absolute units, man. They were so good, in fact, that I made 6 more of them for a 10 combined generators. This made it so my reconstructor was gaining thousands of RF per tick. Soul sand was a problem of the past now, which opened up some new paths as we can melt down quartz into silicon. When I went to check up on my first production line, which I had been feeding soul sand, I managed to hit a lucky break and got a rubber tree sapling. I proceeded to make some tree taps, which would be used for extracting resin out of the trees to make rubber. After planting my first tree, I was met with the beautiful fact that you only need 1 bone meal to grow a tree. The rest of the night was spent on growing these trees, tapping and crooking, and shearing all of the leaves to get the most out of every single one of them. However, I was very sad to learn that these leaves cannot be turned into dirt, so instead I used them for water. That being said, with the resin now obtained, I could get into some new machines, one of which being the macerator. While waiting for the resin to melt into rubber, I added quartz to my sword, giving it sharpness as well, and I claimed some of my daily quests for animal spawn eggs. These were of course immediately offered to the forge gods. For the macerator, we'd need tin and copper as well as iron. These we hammer into plates, after which we just need the insulated copper wire. First you grab a hammer and a copper ingot, slap that into a plate, and cut it into a wire. Easy as cake. Combine that with rubber and you got insulated wires. I made some additional electrical circuits as we'd need them for practically every craft from this mod. One macerator later, I realized this thing of course needed power, which was a separate power system from RF. So we needed to make a generator from industrial craft itself. Before doing so, I combined the iron plates with my pig iron finally, and that quest was knocked out of the way. For my reward, I took the mending moss and added that to my sword. Then I went ahead and I made the industrial craft generator, which we gave some fuel, and the system was up and running. Cactus was now being macerated into biochaff. I also added an extractor on top of the generator, which could extract rubber from the rubber tree logs. Following that, another macerator was added that turned that biochaff into dirt. I tried setting up a sound muffler, however this did not work. And even adding more sound mufflers did not work in the slightest. Adding a glass wall also did not solve my problems, so instead I was going to completely ignore the sounds. I then went ahead and I distracted myself by building another layer of the cactus farm. I called it the Cactus Farm Mark III, which was closely followed by Mark IV, since it was just so easy to set up and so damn efficient. The latter farm I hooked up with pipes directly into my macerators, giving them continuous crops to turn into dirt. I felt I had some motion going, so I made another capacitator that I added to my atomic reconstructor setup, so we at least had a buffer of 1,000,000 RF. I made extra leadstone pipes that I led down the side of the wall into my base, so I could now make a wall of machines. Yes, that is foreshadowing. The first addition to this wall was another autosieve. Production lines were going to start popping up one after another pretty soon. I also realized I didn't need a soul sand generator anymore since I could use the reconstructor for that, and so I made another quantum storage unit and added a chest underneath the sieve, which marked the third production line ready and going. I installed an enchanting table with some bookshelves and upgraded my backpack to iron. After that to gold, and eventually even diamond. And just look at all this juicy storage. The first thing I did with all this new storage was get a load of water bottles inside, so I wouldn't dry out and die somewhere randomly. After that, I did a massive excavation run, and this backpack was the ideal type of item for this labor. Upon returning, I spread the sand equally between my production lines 2 and 3, and I enchanted my first bow. Sadly, this was a completely poopy enchant. The rest of my enchants were also kind of mid, but hey, at least it's better to have some enchants rather than have no enchants. During the night, I used the bow to snipe some skeletons and collected my ground traps as well as my farms. While checking over my tasks to create life, I saw a quest where if we got 4 blocks of emerald, we could then spawn a villager. Now, this was definitely something that I wanted to work towards. During the day, I added a full level of efficiency to my excavator using redstone, effectively doubling its digging speed. That combined with my backpack really cut down on the time I spent digging up sand every day. I also wanted some sort of functional tree farm, although a very basic manual one, since I had no idea how to automate these. After planting some trees, I infested the leaves to stock up on string and infested leaf blocks in the future. I also made something called a shipping bin, where I could then trade in half a stack of crops for an emerald, giving me easy access to the green stuff. And with my first shipment, I was able to get enough emeralds to spawn my very first villager. This guy was a cleric, so he traded gold for emeralds, which was another huge win. And since he would also sell me ender pearls and redstone in the future, I absolutely wanted to keep this guy safe. After that, I moved on to possibly the most important upgrade to the base, a refined storage network. This would allow me to store all of my items in one block and then craft from that block. Before I started this arduous task, I first did some easy jobs around the base for optimization. I gathered infested blocks for sieving, I chopped some trees for logs, I used the reconstructor for Nori crystal blocks, which turned into an auto farmer. I made a bigger farm and added both the growth crystal from the kill quest and the auto farmer that I made, which sadly, of course I should have realized, I didn't have power for it. After that, it was already nighttime, but we were about to make something really epic. Slime boots and a slime sling. This combination will send you absolutely flying and keep you bouncing. This was such a crazy method of transportation, and it was just really fun. I used my little trip to the village for gathering up more Tinkerforge blocks, but this wasn't without danger. In the morning time, I stumbled upon a weird structure with a strange liquid inside of it. After professionally examining this liquid, I discovered it shrunk you. Should have probably known that from the name, in all honesty. Once I returned back to my normal size, I added a bronze pickaxe head to my pick, and I slapped on some lapis for fortune. After which I made the biggest discovery I could have made. I learned about lava generators. This was a machine that could store liquid lava inside of it and turn it straight into RF. I quickly made one and set it up for a test. I still had a drum with some lava inside and hooked this up to the generator. To my surprise, it generated RF at 45 per tick. This was amazing. I could make a whole power plant, powered by infinitely generating lava crucibles. I wasted no time and added 7 more lava generators to the system. Hooked up every one of them with leadstone flux ducts as well. As upgrade my drum to a capacity of 4,000 buckets, giving me the biggest buffer I could possibly use. I did run out of porcelain clay, so I needed to kill some skeletons, and to my disappointment, it already became day by the time I was warmed up. For now, 1 crucible was all that I had. I did lay the groundwork for the other crucibles in the meantime, and I made sure that I had all the netherrack that I would need for said crucibles. I then traded all of my emeralds for bone meal, made some extra crucibles, and lastly, I needed a cobblestone generator. This one I upgraded to tier 3 and installed at the back of my power plant. And just like that, we had infinite sustainable power, baby. That being said, it was finally time for the refined storage system. First of all, we'd need to make a solderer. This would be used to make the various processors required in all the recipes of this mod. The controller, or rather said the heart of the storage system, was easy enough to make without the use of any other machines. For the grid, however, we needed destruction cores, construction cores, and advanced processors. This is where the solderer comes in. From silicon, we make printed silicon. From iron, we can make printed basic processor units. Combine that with the previous 2, and you get a basic processor. Now, every different metal makes a different type of processor. So combine all of the different infinity stones and you shall have infinite storage, or something like that. Then solder the grid with an advanced processor and a crafting table, and boom, you've got a crafting grid. Then we needed a disk drive, some storage parts and a storage housing, and we would have our hard drives completely put together. This would mean we can now upload our items to the cloud. Luckily, this one doesn't have a subscription fee. The rest of the day was spent moving over items from my chest to my storage unit. I worked a bit more on the lava power plant, adding more crucibles and lava transfer nodes, after which I replaced the old coal generators with lava generators, completely eliminating the need for iron buckets in the system, which means that we could finally start stacking iron. I then made another genius discovery. There's a couple different mods that add additional heat sources for the crucible. One of them was surprisingly easy to make. All I had to do was sieve through a bunch of sand to get yellorium dust, with which I could make blocks of yellorium. To melt this dust, I installed an electrical furnace onto my power grid, which surprisingly, I wasn't able to pump directly into my storage system. And I must admit, the speed of this furnace was pretty dang good. While waiting for my yellorium to melt, I learned about an enchanter that runs on RF. I gathered the necessary materials and crafted me one of them. I hooked it up to my power supply. Now all I had to do was make a small detour to the village to gather up some books for bookshelves. Upon returning to the base, my first block of, oh my god, that's uranium. My first blocks of radioactive material were ready for lava production. And let me tell you, 1 block of uranium has the same speed of melting cobblestone as 20 crucibles with torches. Yes, that's a 2 and a 0, 20. This was absolutely bonkers. I upgraded all of the crucibles outside to this radioactive material, with complete disregard to my own personal safety or the safety integrity of my base. After which I completed the bookshelves around my enchanter as well. The first recipe from this that piqued my interest was enchanted ingots. I read up that these could be made into tool parts, and nothing could have prepared me for just how good these actually were. I casted a tool rod and a sword blade out of the enchanted ingots, And when I put these on my sword, I was stunned. My sword's damage increased by 4, and it added 3 modifiers. Still in complete awe of this discovery, I added the tool rod, and to my absolute surprise, it added an additional 3 more modifiers to the sword. I now had 8 modifiers to play around with. This was so insanely overpowered, and it was so beautiful. After that blissful moment, I took a moment for myself to appreciate everything that we'd accomplished so far. But I wanted more, so I got right to work on making a resonator, which immediately stonewalled my progress as I had no clue how this thing worked. Grid power was something I never heard about in Minecraft, so I took to the wiki page to educate myself. I did learn about the lava mill, which also required stone burnt. Now, sadly, this requires 8 grid power in the resonator. I still don't know how to use this thing. While looking at the JEI menu, I did find this manual goofy looking mill, which could just be the thing that I need right now. When I placed it down, I started turning the handles, and surely enough, it was generating power. Of course, I hadn't put anything into my resonator, which was the problem at hand. The first thing I wanted to make with this, however, was this stone burnt, because I wanted to make an automatic way of generating this grid power. So I went ahead and I put some polished stone into my resonator. I then started to manually turn the generator. This created grid power, but at an alarmingly slow rate. I was going to have to sit here for at least a day if I wanted to make some lava mills. This was probably the most exciting Minecraft gameplay you've seen so far from me, isn't it? I know it is for me. After what felt like an eternity, I now had enough to make 1 lava mill. This lava mill I just had to place right next to some lava, and it would start generating grid power. Surely enough, when I placed it right next to it, the lava mill started generating, but only up to a maximum of 2 grid power, which was concerning. I could supplement this by going in with a manual churn as well. This meant we would need at least 4 lava mills to generate 1 stone burnt by itself. And seeing as this completely bored me out of my mind, I worked on making 4 more auto hammers. This I would then use to make a big setup. It was going to be a big operation. I also made 4 cobblestone generators, and each auto hammer would have its own cobblestone generator to supply. Then it would break it down in all 4 of the categories of dust. But I did realize fairly quickly that I was going to need in total 6 auto hammers, because making gravel requires 1, sand requires 2, and making dust requires 3 auto hammers. This also meant I was going to need a much larger area in the base to work with. So I started hollowing out a section just exactly for that right behind my machine wall. After hollowing out quite a large area, it was then time to start on these production lines. I ended up going with a system that was easy to visualize. With hammers going straight across the wall, I then added cobblestone generators underneath each of these auto hammers. Then I would hook up transfer nodes going from one auto hammer to the next one, and after that the auto hammers were completely connected. Now it was time to get the auto sieves in the system as well. Of course, I also had to quickly fill in the gaps that were on my roof, because otherwise zombies would just come crashing down into the base. I also added a couple of leadstone flux ducts connecting from my system to my base, but this still wasn't enough to connect all of these auto hammers up, sadly. And redstone was the thing that was completely gatekeeping me from making a massive production line. Now, the only reliable way I knew of getting redstone was using this sieve with dust and a diamond stiffened mesh. Luckily for me, I had just enough redstone to make 8 more flux ducts, and I could then hook up all of these auto hammers through the system. This meant the whole system was up and running. We were making every single dust imaginable, and now I just needed to get the sieves, and we were sieving them as well. While I was making a cool screenshot, I did realize though I had to give power to the extra hammers that were further down the line, so I quickly did a little bit of rewiring, and I run out of flux ducts, of course. As a little side project, I also wanted to set up a cobblestone generator that has a built-in power supply so that this auto farming tool can mow this whole crop field of rice down. All I just had to do was move over 1 crucible and a block of uranium, hook up a fluid pipe, and then pipe it directly into a lava, generator. And just like that, our automatic farm should be up and going, or at least I thought it would be going. It seems like the auto farmer doesn't take direct power from the lava generator being next to it, which was confusing. Although this was an easy fix, I just had to add 2 leadstone flux ducts connecting the lava generator to the auto farmer, and it was running really fast. This thing was scarily fast, like it was breaking crops instantly and then replanting them. Rice was just starting to pour in. After that, I switched gears. It was time to make 3 auto sieves. These would be at the end of my production lines, going and sieving gravel, dust, and sand. Now, of course, I had to figure out what I would give each sieve as a mesh, because each mesh has a different use. I ended up going with a string mesh and 2 diamond meshes. This would give me the best possible resources that I needed. And so I hooked up all of the auto sieves to the auto hammers, gave them their meshes. Now we just had to make sure that we could get power over to these guys and extract all of the items. And a lot of power we would definitely need. With the power being hooked up now, I had to say this system looks incredibly menacing. This is like a real production line in a factory. There was one issue to fix, the storage issue. All I had to do was hook up the item transfer nodes to every single one of these auto sieves and then connect them all up, leading to a collective storage for this operation. And I ended up going with an obsidian chest. This chest has the largest capacity in one block that I could think of. Now, it was just a matter of connecting these transfer nodes into the obsidian chest, and we'd have all the storage we would need for the foreseeable future. And so, with the fun part of setting up a production line, wiring everything neatly, it was back to doing manual labor, producing grid power. Great. I wanted to finally get the passive grid power going, and this was probably one of the most boring things I have done in this pack. I mean, besides manual sieving, that sucked as well. The reward for this hard labor, although, was upgrade bases. These could make speed upgrades in order to increase the efficiency of my machines, transfer nodes, fluid nodes, everything. With 3 speed upgrades that I crafted, I was very interested to see just how good these things are. I would be putting these into the transfer nodes that were on top of my auto sieves in my production line. Because there's 3 item transfer nodes that are pumping items out of my sieves into my chest, it means that the system could get clumped up. So it made sense to give these first upgrades to my production line. The speed upgrades not being a worry anymore, it was time to move on to the next worry. And just as the button of my disk drives says, priority, this was a priority worry. This would have to take place first of all, because the storage we were running out of. This also meant we would need a lot more quartz. So I just spent some time on my phone while letting my atomic reconstructor do its thing. I also added another one of these lava mills so that I could give myself a little bit more grid power. After doing a little bit of basic soldering work, I was now able to make 4K storage parts, effectively almost doubling the amount of storage I would have in the system. I also still had space for 2 more drives, and these were of course all going to be 4K parts as well. To my surprise, I moved over all the items that my other production lines had already sieved, and we were starting to get backed up with storage again, already. I think I came to a realization that I used a lot of items in this pack. And I came to another realization very shortly after, which is that I could use fluid transfer nodes in order to replace the faucets on the Tinker's construct. This would automatically fill my casting basins with blocks. And then if I use an item transfer node, it automatically takes out those blocks into a chest. This would kind of fully automate my forge, honestly. And I got to say, this was pretty amazing. I'm kind of sad I discovered it only now, because this could have saved a lot of manual work, but I was glad at least I was on the right track. Also, further optimizing this system, it's a lot easier to use an ingot mold for this, because you don't always have enough molten metal to fill a full casting bin, making you lose the remaining ingots, and the system also comes to a halt. The ingot mold completely eliminates this problem from occurring. That's when something dramatic happened that completely drowned out my spirits. A creeper managed to blow up half of my machine wall. This was honestly very devastating for me because I spent all this time making these different machines, processors, and making the grid, smoldering everything together. I even lost my resonator, and with no access to my storage, I had no items to work with. It was going to be incredibly difficult to remake all of these things. Nonetheless, I didn't let it get me down. Well, probably a little bit, but I started making printed silicon again. All the different types of processors and printed processors. I made improved processors. I made construction cores. I as well made the destruction cores. And I made the machine casing and finally put everything together, making ourselves a brand new, fresh grid. Now, all we had to do now was solder this grid together with an advanced processor and a crafting table, and we'd finally have access to all of our storage again. It took me a whole Minecraft day to make another one of these. This is probably right now my most expensive item that I own, or most tedious item to make. But with access to my full storage, again, I was happy. I wasn't sad anymore. I was ready to spring back into action. I also had to remake my electrical furnace. I was also going to need another resonator after what felt like an eternity. And I was up and running. All my machines were rebuilt. It was time to take a very small break. When I came to check on my production line, I noticed we were consuming more energy than that we were producing, which meant that our lava energy plant was not doing what it was supposed to do. And since my lava generators had enough lava inside of them, it was just an issue of that there weren't enough generators in the system to keep up with the energy demand. So I quickly made 5 more lava generators and hooked these all up to my lava drum. This would mean we were back to 8 lava generators, producing a massive amount of energy. I also loaded up my coal generators with about half a stack of worth coal each, so that they would produce the needed energy that we were lacking in the meantime. While I waited, I could then make more lava generators. And so I went to check up on my production line, which right now, everything seemed to be working normally. All the sieves were going, all the hammers were going, the whole system was running smooth, and we were back in business. This of course meant we now had room to make a second production line. Oh yeah! Sieving every single item imaginable. I just had to copy and paste the exact same design on the other side of the base and we were good to go. I hooked up everything to the same obsidian chest, which was going to be my collective storage, and this meant we had 2 full production lines going into the same shared storage. We are going to be swimming in resources very soon. Now all I had to do was hook these up to the same power supply, and we would probably exceed our production speed of power again. For now though, it seemed like everything was going more or less. But with all this extra automation, it was clear that we were going to need a lot more power. Now initially I thought that this lava production unit would be the best thing out there, at least with my current knowledge. So I added a couple more crucibles to the system, which I would hook up with transfer pipes, fluid pipes, and everything, the yada yada, the full shtick. This also made me think I should probably add another buffer to the system, because otherwise I can imagine it would take ages for some of the cobble and the lava to go from the furthest point of the system to the middle point of my lava generators. That, and I also add another cobblestone generator at the back of the furthest crucibles. This would make the spread of cobblestone across my crucibles a little bit more even. After which I did the same on the other side of the tier 3 cobblestone generator. And now with 2 additional cobblestone generators, all of my crucibles were filling up rather nicely. With that in mind, I made another reinforced large drum, which could then act as my second buffer in the system, storing another 4,000 buckets worth of lava. Seeing that the drum was already getting filled up with 5 buckets of lava meant that the system was working. And it also meant we now had a lot of extra room for more lava generators. I added redstone flux ducts leading across the whole wall. I was ready to set up a 2-block high wall spanning across the whole base that we could fill with the lava generators on top of lava generators. I also made a massive upgrade to my forge, giving it another couple of good layers so we can put in even more ores and melt them for more ingots. And I wanted to set up another production line. But this one was going to be different. This one was just going to hammer down cobblestone into gravel, cobblestone into sand, and cobblestone into dust, that I would then put in quantum storage units so we'd have an infinite supply of all 3 of those resources. The first production line to this effect was the dust production line, since it was the most expensive to set up. I then added a quantum storage unit, and we now had infinitely producing dust. I quickly did a routine checkup to see if the system was working, and it did indeed appear so. On the evening of the glorious day 69, I added more lava generators to the power plant, as well as take a look at my auto farmer, and my goodness, This bad boy had generated 6 stacks of rice. All this rice would then be sent in my shipping bin in order to get emeralds. Now, with these emeralds, I would then buy myself a lot of new different species of seeds. This way, we can make a lot of different foods from a wide variety of crops. I finally made something that is absolutely insane, and honestly, one of the coolest blocks in the game. This is an elevator block. This thing functions as an actual elevator, but more like teleportation. If you place 2 of these above or below each other, not exactly like this, but once they're placed right, you can teleport yourself by jumping up or shifting to sneak, and it is glorious. The remainder of this day was spent taking my dirt and filling in all the little gaps in my passive mob farm, giving me a lot more grassland to work with. I was still hoping to make an actual passive mob farm one day if I would be able to keep myself from getting distracted, but we all know that's a lost cause. For the rest of the night on day 69, I just spent time cooking, making new dishes, researching new foods that would be highly nutritious, and if we wanted to keep this run going and make my life just a lot easier, this meant we had to get the best food. Now, I was already well into Pam's harvest craft, and one of the coolest things that I found is we can actually make cactus into soup, and since we have infinite cactus, this was just a no-brainer. Toast was also a really good bread item that was even more nutritious than bread. The seed soup and the spider eye bone stock are also great choices. They're a little bit less nutritional. In the morning, I went ahead and I changed my crops in my auto farmer from rice to potatoes and carrots, meaning we would have all the resources we need to make more bait for our ground traps. That's when I stumbled upon possibly one of the most insane crafting recipes I have ever seen in Minecraft. This used an extreme crafting bench and I had no idea what I was looking at. But just look at this. The Skullfire sword. It didn't even look that strong and it required so many items. A nether star, crystal matrix ingots, I can't even pronounce it, that's how difficult it is to craft it, which I've honestly never heard about. This was some nuts recipe. Now, on the topic of power generation, switching gears from that crazy recipe, I was still not convinced that lava generators was the best thing that I could do. So I found this thing called a culinary generator. This would turn crops into RF, although probably at a very slow rate. And after making that one, I found out about the explosive generator, which generates 500,000 RF for 1 TNT. Now, I had a slight inkling that it would cause explosions, but I never would have imagined that it would cause explosions 24/7. This was one mean machine. It makes a lot of noise. It is obnoxious, but man, does this generate power! And then I added the second production line. This production line would add sand into my system as well, where one of my auto sieves that was still requiring a manual input of sand would be scrapped and it would be automated completely. And yes, this explosive generator in the background is being an absolute menace. It was then time to clean up the base a little bit, slow things down for a second, change the pace. I took down my second production line that I ever made, effectively rendering this thing out of commission. We were going to include this in another production line within the main frame behind of our wall of machines. With that in mind, I finally took care of business and added 2 additional quantum storage units that I needed for my gravel production and my sand production. These were going to get set up with auto hammers, each having their own separate transfer line of items, and using the wrench I could then clean up everything nicely. It was, simply said, beautiful. This was looking like a generic freak base of ingenuity. I even had 3 little windows to gaze into my quantum area of infinite storage. I gotta say, it felt really good to have all of these systems automated, because that meant I never had to look out for resources ever again. It was so glorious. No more manual labor, no more manual sieving, no more manual digging. This was it. I finished off the day by adding 9 more lava generators into my power plant. With these 9 more additional generators, I now had a crazy amount of power production. I also tried messing around a little bit by setting up a new form of atomic reconstructor. I wanted to combine 4 of them in a 1x1 area that I could just drop a stack of sand into and turn it into a stack of soul sand with 1 button press. However, there was one thing that I didn't account for, and that is that these things suck energy like crazy. So that meant that the consumption was skyrocketing. which also made it so my grid completely glitched out, rendering it effectively unable to be accessed. Which means I lost my access to my items again. Now, the good thing about this was that once these atomic reconstructors have their buffers filled up, they will activate the system again because they don't keep on using power. But in order to fix the problem, I thought I just needed to add a lot more power production. So I first went ahead and inserted some carrots into the culinary generator, but these things don't really generate that much electricity. So it was kind of unproductive, in a sort of sense. I mean, the explosion generator was just infinitely better than any of the other ones I've had before. Now, with my atomic reconstructor turned off, as you can see, the buffer's completely filled. My storage system has enough power again. I then tried a triple atomic reconstructor setup, thinking this would suck a little bit less power. And in order to compensate for these atomic reconstructors, I also made another explosive generator. God, I love these things. The explosion sounds were a bit much, I have to admit, but it had its own charm, you know? Now, with all this progress that we made, this might mean we run out of storage. We probably run out of storage. Now, admittedly, after loading up the game again after a day's break, I had completely forgotten about my storage issue. And instead, I got distracted by a new quest line, which was immersive engineering. And the first thing the quest called for was making a crude blast furnace. This was a multi-block structure that would allow us to make steel using iron and coke coal. The recipe wasn't cheap either, requiring 4 bricks, 4 nether bricks, and a blaze powder per 3 blocks. This recipe we would need to make 9 times in order to get enough blocks for our multi-block structure. Now, for some reason, it also appeared that I couldn't run my electrical furnace and my manual grid power together. So I sometimes had to take out a machine one at a time, which led me to only do one of the 2 at a time. For now, though, I focused on the blast furnace after making all of the blocks, and it was time we made the coke oven. This required a whole different recipe. It just required bricks and a bunch of clay. Not too bad. I did, however, spend so long spinning my way into passive power generation until I had enough materials to make 5 additional lava mills. This would put me straight at 8 lava mills in total, and I was finally done with this godforsaken task of spinning a fidget spinner in Minecraft. We now had passive generating grid power. It was beautiful. I could just insert polished stone into my resonator and just let it run for a whole day, and it was done. It was ready. I also made 2 speed upgrades for my electrical furnace, and this thing was absolutely zooming. So after freeing up a little bit more space in the side of our base, we now had a workable area we could focus on engineering and construction. Now, when I eventually got to making this coal coke oven, something strange happened. Normally, when you put all the blocks together of a multi-block, it transforms, giving you an indication that it's fully formed and well put together. This time that didn't happen. And it was for the dumbest reason that I could think of. I was just being an absolute jackass. We needed to grab an engineer's hammer, right-click in the middle of this multi-block, and they were fully functional. Now we had a way to get creosote, oil, and steel. Since I was running out of storage fast, I also made another 4K storage part. This would bump my storage up to 13,000. I kind of wonder how much data all of these items would use in a theoretical cloud. Leave it down in the comments below if you got this far, and also drop a sub. You've already been watching for this long, so why not go ahead and do it? To my surprise, I also had enough resources to make another 4K storage part, further increasing our storage to 17,000. We were going to be set for the near future like this. The engineer's quest line opened up wide, and also a new quest era called Technical Revolution presented itself to us. This really piqued my interest. The first thing we'd have to do was getting down to basics. And for the basics, we had to make a wooden generator. A little bit late for this bad boy, but hey, we'd probably be able to use the generators for something after completing all of these quests. I also realized there's something called the temperature regulator, which can be made into a portable version, and that is something that we can charge up with RF, and we have plenty of that. So I got very excited. After upgrading the basic generators to iron generators, I unlocked an interesting quest. So we could also... Whoa! Yeah, this quest absolutely overwhelmed me, as this is practically an introduction to make a nuclear reactor that uses radioactive material as a fuel source. This is absolutely nuts. Nonetheless, I got really excited for it, and I immediately started crafting my way towards that quest. First things first, we'd need a couple of machines from Ender.io to actually be able to make the nuclear reactor parts. The first of which being a Stirling generator. It also appeared that we were going to need something called an alloy smelter to make the materials needed for other Ender.io machines. A little bit complicated, but I'll make it as easy as possible to follow. First up was this alloy smelter. The good thing about this smelter is that it uses RF, so I could just extend my redstone flux ducts that are hooked up to my production lines, and my machine had power. I also put the Stirling generator right next to it so we could just throw in any fuel that we needed, and it would also generate RF right next to the machines that we needed. Now, luckily for me, I already had macerators set up so I could just put in some coal inside and then get the coal dust that we needed. Now you might ask, why do we need coal dust? Well, simply because we need electrical steel, which is made with iron, silicon, and coal dust. The first machine we would make with this electrical steel is something called a combustion chamber. It looked like this thing generates power, which is not what we're after, but it was another quest knocked out of the way. Further progressing these quests also gave me another lifeblood crystal, meaning we were now up to 7 hearts. Super random, but hey, I'm not one to complain. And finally, it was time to move on to my portable temperature regulator. I really wanted this machine. I just needed 3 cooling coils and 3 heating coils, combine that with 2 machines and an advanced electronic circuit, and we now have a temperature regulator. Now, this was still in block form, so we had to adjust it a little bit, and we did that by adding another cooling coil, a heating coil, and then we were done. We had a portable temperature regulator. I did go ahead and make another capacitor so I could add it to the setup, which was going to act like my power bank, meaning I could just charge up my items inside of that one. Just like that, we stored 20,000 RF inside the temperature regulator, and we had pure temperature control. It was at a perfect equilibrium at all times. In order to progress the quest book, I just made some random basic quests from immersive engineering. And one of them was to make a windmill blade. And just to show you how unhinged this quest book is, we go from making a windmill to making guns. Let me repeat, we go from making windmills to making guns. This quest book is so... I'm done. I wanted to advance my knowledge on different machinery, and after doing the first quest, a couple of other quests opened up as well. Some of them I was a little bit confused about. Now, I did spot that there are a couple of Ender.io blocks that we have to make. One of these machines is called an SAG mill. Now, I thought this would cut wood, honestly, but when I placed it down, it looked like something completely different, and I had no idea what this thing did. I then read up on the quest to actually learn what this machine does. Apparently, it allows you to crush dust. Now, while I was doing this, a villager came up, and this guy wanted some smoke. Look, he's just staring right in my face. He's staring... In my own base, he's staring me down. I honestly thought this could have been a skinwalker, because just look at this guy. But putting that aside, my quest book wanted me to make another alloy smelter, because I kind of made the previous one a little too early. Now, that being said, the alloy smelter works quite slowly, so it wasn't a total waste of time to have 2 of them. That's when something insane opened. This is the overpowered questline. And there was apparently something called Fusion Crafting, a world breaker pickaxe with Fortune 10, as well as a Sword of the Cosmos with infinite attack damage and infinite armor. I was speechless. So, instead of reading more about those quests, I went on to some more basic questing, like making a basic capacitor bank. It felt a little bit more comfortable for me. Another really interesting machine that I read about was this Slice and Splice. Now, this is a machine where you could make different items used in Ender.io crafting recipes, but for some of the more advanced recipes. These would also take mob heads. Now, seeing as we're going to need these mob heads also for a farm that I'm planning about, we needed to make a cleaver. And what better material than our beautiful enchanted metal? I also had enough lapis from auto-sieving that I could immediately put Fortune 3, or rather said Looting 3, on this enchanted iron cleaver. Combine that with a little bit of quartz, and this puppy already dealt 18.7 damage. Putting the cleaver to use, it was fair to say that this sword did massive damage. It was pretty good at killing the enemy. I did manage to get away by the skin of my teeth. Now, with the mob head secured, I could make something called a soul binder, This is another interesting block from Ender Iota, can change the mob type of a spawner. Now, before I got into all of that crazy stuff, I actually got soft locked out of a quest because we needed squids and squid ink to make black dye for something called a monitor. Apparently this thing was going to show us how our power consumption could be optimized, but yeah, it was gatekept by black dye. So outside of my base, I took a drum with water, started filling in a small pond, and made sure that all of the water inside was source blocked. And all we had to do now was wait, which is really boring. So I'm gonna skip that. Now I finally got squids to spawn, and that means that calamari was back on the menu. These squids were actually a lot faster than I thought they would spawn, which was honestly a godsend. I didn't want to wait around for 5 days just to wait for some damn squid to spawn. So really, it was a W. And when I finally got to placing down this graphical monitor, man, I'm even having trouble reading off of the script. When I finally went to placing down this graphical monitor, I had no idea what I was looking at. I didn't understand any of this stuff. And my very next quest was something completely unhinged again. They wanted me to make dragon's breath. Like, what? In this dragon's breath, you could actually make with ender pearls, nether stars, and a stable ender pearl. This was made with obsidian, lapis, and regular ender pearls. So it wasn't exactly as expensive as I thought it was, but that nether star is still quite expensive. I tried making an automated endstone farm using a barrel of lava and glowstone, but this, however, didn't seem to work. Instead, I upgraded all of my tools to enchanted ingot parts, and I proceeded by making Notch's favorite food, before descending into literal hell itself. Now, I wasn't sure what was gonna happen, but it appears that the nether was turned on and functioning normally. Leave it down in the comments if this is supposed to be, for those who know, because I still think this shouldn't actually be possible, considering we have all these crazy recipes for all these specific nether items. So I just grabbed a few basic resources and left, because it sort of felt like cheating, not gonna lie. Back in the base, I worked on upgrading the cleaver and making a Z logic controller, after which the quest book went from requiring a couple of ingots to a literal weapon of war, sentry guns. This was surprisingly easy to make as well, with the most expensive materials being electric steel. I put all the parts together and boom, we now had a nice security feature to add to the base. I placed it down on tier 2 turret base and we were rolling. The Z logic controller unit, whatever thingy, was used to make a powered spawner. I could use that to get wither heads from spawning wither skeletons. I made a nice little hole in the base for that purpose, and combined a broken wither skelly spawner with a powered spawner in an anvil, which set its type. I then hooked up some power to it. Alas, while looking at the power interface, it was clear that my normal power line was not making enough power at all. Luck was on my side. I had way more explosives than they used in the Minecraft movie, and powering my powered spawner with explosive generators was now a problem of the past. With wither skeletons spawning, I had a steady supply of heads and also necrotic bones. This was a modifier as well, granting us 10% lifesteal per necrotic bone. Now, seeing as our enchanted metal tools gave us a lot of modifiers, it was kind of a no-brainer to dump necrotic bones on my weapon, so we could have lifesteal like the real Count Dracula himself. Combine that with some consecrated soil, and I had what felt like the Excalibur in my hands. The quest book then gave me a mission to find a crashed meteor. This was a really long distance from the base, but after bouncing around for a little while with my slime boots, I could start seeing the fissures in the ground, which confirmed that I was going to the right place. I started seeing bits and pieces of skystone until the big ball revealed itself. I tried digging into this meteor, but it was absolutely pitch black. It was even so dark that I couldn't see what was going on the screen. And as if timed perfectly by some outside being, it became a blood moon. So sticking around here was not gonna be the best thing, because I would probably get overrun. I bounced back to the base to prepare for this new expedition. I stocked up on loads of drinking water, did some enchanting of new emerald gear I crafted, and finally made a hammer, which is a pickaxe that breaks in a 3x3 area. Slime sling in hand, I set out back to the landing site. Oh, here we go. What is all of this? Oh my goodness. I don't see any creepers. Okay. All right, time to kill. Time to kill and figure out what this place is. Because this is looking very crazy. Spatial pylons. ME drives. Crafting monitor. ME glass cable. Cell workbench. Dark illuminated pane. Oh. That wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. Oh, I did almost reach this place. What are these? Drills? This is pretty interesting. I will be taking all of this with me. I didn't even switch around my shoes. Oh, well. Oh, well. Well, I guess we're taking all of this with us. And we're going to need to make an ME chest. I mean, this does kind of indicate where I got to go. I'm so confused what this place is. I think these look like fiber cables, right? They got to be expensive. With this ancient technology now in my possession, I would finally be able to... Well, actually, I don't know what this stuff did, so I stashed it away and it would kind of be forgotten. Instead, I enchanted a couple of bows and prepared a god bow for my next big fight, which was facing a wither. Hey, bows got good damage. Oh, that's close. That is close. This guy hurts. Killing this decrepit old fool, I now had access to nether stars, with which we can craft dragon's breath for our quest. I also found a great use for my gold by turning it into all god apples, which took way more gold than I expected, which was good because we have an insane amount of this stuff. I proceeded with crafting a dragon's breath, which gave us an additional 1 through the quest. Psych, I actually got the 10 loot chest instead. This opened up a second tier of lava generators though, which got me really excited. When I went to put this bad boy to use, it showed that it generated 360 RF per tick. This was a really good generator. Then the plot twist came, which was I didn't take another dragon's breath, I took 10 loot chests. For some good old-fashioned gamba, baby, let's go. After being completely let down by these items, I have to put in a mandatory warning label. Don't gamble, guys. Please don't gamble. Instead, I reformed by working on bettering myself, which I interpreted as making my power plant better. I added more crucibles and more pipes, as well as an additional couple of cobblestone generators, making the whole system flow faster and more efficient. At least I think so. While sipping on some coffee, I was checking out some of this extreme crafting, and honestly, these recipes still flabbergasted me every time I saw them. I also learned of the end cake, and it would seem logical I had to create a cake to go to the end, right? Like to have a big old party with a dragon, something like that. Now, in order to do so, I needed milk, which comes from cows, which can be spawned with 20 eggs. Sadly for me, I didn't have 20 eggs. But not to fret. I put some extra veggie bait into the ground traps, as well as make a little chicken house with hoppers to extract eggs. All we needed now was a little bit of time. With that time, I made myself a bauble that would reduce fire damage. I then spent some time as well looking into the void ore miner, a rather expensive recipe, although it would allow us to dig up some ores that we didn't have access to in this world under normal circumstances. I made the first tier of said void miner. I made a magic one that would aid me in putting this thing together, and like a caveman, I naturally clicked it and expected magic to happen. Instead, nothing happened. It gave me a fetch quest, rather said, for other blocks. Now, the easiest thing to make was the lens and the laser. The lens I gave a red color so it had a better chance of finding red ores like redstone. While on a nightly stroll, the soon-to-be calamari was also looking pretty healthy. And I had to do some manual sieving for redstone. I thought I was a genius. I put 9 compressed sieves in a 3x3, thinking this would use all of them together. But oh, was I naive. Of course there wouldn't be such a mechanic in the game. Now I made 9 diamond meshes with nothing to show for it. However, I realized something. Since food gives the sieves a speed boost, and I still had the epic bacon from way back, I was wondering how good this would exactly be. And apparently, it is 14 times as good, since this sieve was zooming. After giving the void ore miner some extra space, it was time to put it together, which was actually really easy with the help of that wand because that auto builds it. Now we just had to dig our way to bedrock for the laser to activate, which made me stumble upon a mine shaft. This would have been rather nice to know early on in the game, not gonna lie. Reaching bedrock, the laser activated. I then learned of the nether star generator, which would turn 1 nether star into 10 million RF. And then it clicked. I could use a wood mob factory to farm withers. The stars aligned, and a new goal was set from there on. First, I had to kill another wither, however. With another nether star secured, I could then put an obsidian chest next to the void ore miner, along with a nether star generated, and keep this puppy powered forever. After which I was able to also make a fusion crafting table. I just had one problem. I needed diamond gear for this, which required creeper oysters. That I didn't have, and there was also no recipe for it, so the fusion crafting table was forgotten about. Instead, I started on my master plan with farming withers. I made a wood factory display block that showed me what blocks to put where in order for the factory to work. These factories also have different tiers, which involve a little bit of crafting, but the blocks themselves weren't all too expensive, so this was great. With my tier 1 factory set up, all I had to do now was craft a mob prism. This was a tool used to program a core that could set the spawn for the mob factory. I had a great plan. To use this on a wither skeleton, which was unfortunately a rather rare mob and needed a higher tier factory. Even upgrading the factory to tier 2 wasn't enough to get wither skeletons to spawn. I took a little detour as well, finally making the end cake, which got me excited until I placed it down. One slice of cake was a little anticlimactic for my taste. For my next powered spawner, I would then use Enderman, which I also needed to kill for the wood factory tier 3. Now, it was kind of a bad idea. Not only do they teleport themselves, but they can teleport you to them as well. Maybe I shouldn't look at them, but maybe I should just fight them. Oh god, yeah, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. I am very happy I got this lifesteal because, oh my god, this is the worst situation I could have possibly found myself in. Get me out of here. Yeah, I did get 13 ender pearls, so that's pretty great. All right, we can probably finish this woot thing. Yeah. With the woot factory now at tier 3, we were spawning wither skeletons and automatically killing them. This meant we needed a lot of power, however. So for my next project, I wanted a nuclear reactor. With all the blocks made, I started building the reactor, but with no blueprint, no book, and a very small wiki page, this wasn't as straightforward as I thought it was. The good thing is that you can get a chat pop-up if some blocks are placed wrongly. After fidgeting around for a while, I actually managed to make it work. Whoa! Okay, we got a reactor. Oh my god, what is all of this? This is crazy. Oh my god, wasting the core will be ejected as soon as possible. Yeah. So, how do I even put items inside of this thing? Now it just needs yellorium ingots? I can't even put it inside. Oh, I can. So we got core fuel. So how do we go from status offline to status online? Activate the reactor, that's how. It's 500 RF per tick. I guess we should try making this bigger. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. Nuclear reactor, baby. We're gonna have unlimited power. We're gonna have unlimited power. This is insane. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. We're gonna be adding coolant to all of this. Yes, yes. Because I'm responsible and I know what I'm doing. This is probably the craziest, or one of the craziest machines I've ever made in Minecraft in my entire life. And it's kind of growing on me because this is really, really cool. Then we go with these. Then we can start closing off this area. Whoa! Okay, I wanna add something else that's really cool. Okay. Now I'm hype. This should still work then. Yeah, it does. Boom. Boom. That fills the puppy up. Well, activate the reactor, baby. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Temperature is good. Only using 0.1 millibuckets per tick, which is probably a lot, now that I think about it. Okay, wow, 6k RF per tick. That's nuts. That's nuts. This is incredibly crazy. I hooked everything up to a power line going out of the reactor, and after checking its interface, it appeared that it was still using more power than that I was generating. This was an easy fix with my nether star generator that I added on top of this power line. I also had a visitor that night, and sadly he wanted to show he had hands, which ended up in him getting a new fade instead. A cool thing about Woot is that you have upgrade blocks that act like enchantments as well. Before getting into that, I first upgraded the factory to tier 4, after which we added 2 extenders and a proxy block underneath, so that the factory had an access port to extract items and also pump in power. Moving on to the upgrade blocks, we needed an enchanter from Ender.io to get the correct enchantment books that we need. This block required us to use books and quill as a base material. Good thing that I had a calamari farm ready to deliver ink sacs. The first upgrade block that I made was an efficiency upgrade, effectively reducing the power usage per spawn by 50,000. There are different tiers in the upgrade blocks as well, and a tier 2 efficiency was in my eyes a must, further reducing the usage by another 20,000 RF. The upgrade after that was a mass upgrade, making it so the farm spawned 4 mobs instead of 1. And so with everything set up, I went to the nether and spawned another wither. This guy was gonna be the next mob in the farm, so I whacked him with a mob prism and got his soul, after which I put it inside of the Woot farm. And let me tell you, the results of this farm are extremely shocking. Oh my god, it already generated 4 of them. It already generated 4 of them. It generated another 4. Oh, what? Okay. Now I gotta think about how I'm gonna do my energy generation from now on, because we're gonna be generating way too much energy. Like, legit. This generates at 4,000 RF per tick. That's the maximum these lines can handle. There we go. It also withers me, which is rather inconvenient. Since we now had infinite nether stars, I wanted to get into extreme crafting. The first thing we'd need was 8 crystal matrix ingots and a double compressed crafting table, which are 20 diamonds each with 2 nether stars each per ingot, for a grand total of 160 diamonds and 16 nether stars. This is just for the crafting table of this mod. Nuts. Now, of course, I did not have all of these riches, so what I did was set up 3 more gravel sifting production lines just to get more diamonds. We also needed a double compressed crafting table, and it actually required 2 fully grown 2x2 jungle trees just to make the crafting table for the recipe. Yeah, it required this much wood. Eventually, I did have everything ready to make this crazy craft. This is the most expensive recipe I have used so far in the mod pack. A dire crafting table. This is my magnum opus. I don't even know where to put this thing. This this is a 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 by 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. This is a 9 by 9 crafting table. That is a stack of items in here. Okay. What's the first thing we're making with this? Let's see. What is something that we can make with this? Cosmic meatballs. Pile of neutrons. We probably need like a neutron generator for that, right? Neutron collector. That's the one. That's probably what I need first. Which is, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 crystal matrix ingots. 12 and 9, so 21 blocks of redstone. Do I even have that? 21 blocks of redstone. I do. I do have that. Then we need iron blocks and quartz blocks. I don't even think I have enough quartz for all this. They're all the way up the top here. Oh, that's all the quartz that I need. Then it's a lot of iron. Like a lot of iron. Oh my god, this crafting recipe is nuts. What are we doing? What are we doing? Extreme crafting. Yeah, that's, I mean, you can say that again, right? I'm stuck for diamonds again, which is a little bit sad. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna make a coffee and I'm just gonna AFK. Because I honestly can't be asked to sit around and wait here in order for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 times 8 is over a stack. It's over a stack, right? There has to be a better way to farm diamonds, right? Am I just being crazy? Like, what? I want this one. That's infinity ingots. And one infinity ingot is all of this, which is an infinity catalyst, which is this is insane. Like this is genuinely insane. Golden singularity. This is genuinely insane. Oh no. That's only 35. Are you kidding me? Oh my god, did we make it? We made it! We made it! Oh my god! Oh my god! Ain't no way. Alright, let's get these crafts going. Oh. Look at this! A neutron collector. I'm gonna be pulling particles out of the air inside of this neutron collector in order to form them into little neutrons. Boom. This is the most expensive block that I own. It passively generates neutrons. This is wild. It is also incredibly slow. It's 0.1% per tick or something. So what I think this is going to generate, I think this generates a pile of neutrons. 9 piles get turned into a neutronium nugget. 9 neutronium nuggets get turned into a neutronium ingot. And then these neutronium ingots are used in all of the crafting recipes of extreme crafting. And they're one of the less expensive materials that we need for like infinity armor and stuff like that. The infinity ingots are the more expensive stuff, because I don't even know how to make any of these items. But in 100 days, well, actually, I think it's time. I think it's time for something incredible. I think it is time for something incredible. And that is my first and only time sleeping in the pack. Oh god. Of course. Of course, I don't even have the wood or the wool for this, but that's gonna be fine. That's 1, that's 2, and that's 3. I'll sleep in the middle of my machines. That works. The first time I sleep in the pack. Day 100. Day 100. And we're gonna finish off day 100 with a neutron collector. We just gotta AFK for a little bit longer. Oh, ho, ho. We've got a pile of neutrons. This was the most difficult item to obtain in the whole pack. I'm gonna hang this bad boy up. I'm gonna hang this up. Give me an item frame right now. Item frame. Pile of... Oh my god, it looks ass. I thought it would have the really cool particle effect as well. Wait, then we got something like an altar. This is super anticlimactic. No, we don't. Oh no. Wait, a pedestal? Hold on. Can we use that? No, we can't use that. No! There's no pedestal to be used. Oh no. Well, anyway, that's the pile of neutrons right there. It looks like any regular old pebble, like a stone pebble. Oh man, what a journey. What a journey. We've got lava generators and a whole crucible setup. That was my go-to way of generating RF. I then discovered the explosive generator, which was a massive boost to our RF production. I built the cactus farms. Oh man, I can't forget about the cactus farms. The cactus farms were great. These little suckers helped me produce water, and they helped me produce dirt. We got our pool of squids. The MVP elevator block. Where is it again? Ah, here it is. The MVP elevator block. My very first type of automated hammering and automated sieving. The lava mills. The furnace setup and our beautiful Tinker's Construct setup. Man, the dirt production. This abomination of macerating, where I was macerating mulch. And I started building this holy wall of whatever. It's crazy stuff. We got the automatic enchanter, where we got our tools with, our absolute crazy tools. We got this whole crazy sieving setup. We made a nuclear reactor. This was also incredibly cool. Then we had a void ore miner, which is something insane. We got a nether star generating like a stack of almost 10 million RF per nether star. We got a tier 4 woot mob farm. I didn't even hook this thing up to any storage. Oh my god, this is dumb. Oh my god, this is so dumb. What? This is so dumb. What do you mean? There's no way. This is illegal. This is so illegal to look at. This is so illegal to look at. This is something. This is definitely something. How many nether stars is that in total? That is 962 nether stars. What a journey, man. What a journey. This has been absolutely crazy. I think we achieved a lot in 100 days. And to be honest, this was a lot of fun. I definitely recommend this pack, even for somebody that has practically no knowledge of tech packs. The only 2 tech packs that I've played were, well, Terra Firmacraft, but that really wasn't any tech in there. And the only other tech pack I played was GTNH. So, with only that experience behind my belt, I think we did pretty good. I think everything looks really janky, and a lot of people are probably going to be thinking like, oh my god, this guy does not know what he's doing. And they would be absolutely right. With that being said, it's been me, your boy ElAbro, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!